Imagine losing a full day's wages, paying like $50 in gas, and driving 4 hours round trip.
Oh, man.
And all of that for a 50-minute conversation about why you're feeling completely exhausted.
Yeah.
It's wild. But for residents in rural Georgia, that is the literal everyday cost of therapy.
It really is. It's a huge burden.
Right. So welcome to this deep dive. Today, we are taking a hard look at a really specific source text. It details this modern healthcare model called Coping and Healing Counseling, or CHC.
Yeah, CHE.
And our mission today is to figure out how this single practice is attempting to completely dismantle those traditional geographic barriers to mental health support. You know, the ones that have just bottlenecked rural care for decades now.
Decades, exactly. It's an old problem.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Okay.
Because the core problem identified right out of the gate in our source material is just the sheer reality of rural living. I mean, if you live outside a major metropolitan hub, your access to care is basically dictated by geography.
Yeah, and I think framing the source material correctly is crucial before we even, look at the solution. Because we are essentially examining a blueprint for solving a massive supply chain issue. Except, the supply in this case is specialized mental health care.
Right, which is highly specific.
Exactly. And the chain is this sprawling 159 county map of Georgia. The text points directly to that physical distance between patients and care, laying out the reality that the nearest therapist might literally be a 1 or 2 hour drive away.
Which, I mean, that completely alters the nature of the treatment itself. Like, I look at that 2-hour commute and I just see a grueling road trip.
Oh, for sure.
You are driving the length of a full feature film, watching all these mile markers blur past, just to sit in a waiting room and talk about your anxiety.
Yeah, and then you have to drive back.
Yes. Then, when you were emotionally raw from the session, you just poured your heart out, you get back in your car and drive another feature film's length to get home. It's exhausting just thinking about it.
What's fascinating here is how the text explicitly recognizes that exact journey as a systemic barrier, not just like a minor inconvenience.
Right. It's not just annoying, it's blocking care entirely.
Exactly. The source actually mentions the reality of, quote, taking a whole day off work just to get an appointment.
Wow. Yeah, that hits hard.
It does, because the barrier to therapy in a rural setting isn't fundamentally a medical issue, right? It is a brutal economic and time burden.
You're losing a whole day of wages.
You're losing wages. You are likely paying for extended childcare, which isn't cheap. The physical geography creates this massive financial wall that is often, it's just way too high for someone who is already struggling with their mental health to scale.
I always wonder, and I'm sure you hear this a lot, why don't we just build more clinics in these underserved areas?
Oh, yeah, the classic build it and they will come idea.
Right, just subsidize local practices so people don't have to drive 2 hours in the first place.
Yeah.
But then when you actually look at the economics of rural health care, that neighborhood clinic model is just mathematically broken.
The math simply does not support it. It just doesn't.
Why is that exactly?
Well, a highly specialized therapist needs a certain volume of patients to keep a physical brick-and-mortar clinic operational, right? They have rent, utilities, staff.
Oh, true. The overhead is huge.
Exactly. So if you place, say, a trauma specialist in a town of 2,000 people, the subset of that population seeking specialized trauma care at any given moment might be like 5 or 10 individuals.
Which is definitely not enough to keep the lights on.
No, that is not a sustainable business model for a physical clinic at all. The low population density essentially starves the specialized supply.
Ah, I see.
So that forces rural practitioners to act as extreme generalists, or it just forces the clinics to close down entirely. And that creates those massive geographic dead zones the text describes.
So the geography prevents the density, and then the lack of density prevents the care. It's just this vicious cycle. It is basically a geographic and time tax on mental health.
That's a great way to put it, a geographic tax.
Right. So since we know physical geography and local economics are the main bottlenecks, the source proposes bypassing them entirely through technology.
Which is the big pivot here.
Yeah. The text states that coping and healing counseling serves all 159 counties in Georgia by being 100% telehealth and using secure video therapy.
It's a complete pivot away from the brick-and-mortar dependency. By digitizing the clinic, they are attempting to neutralize that geographic tax completely.
I mean, I see the geographic fix.
Yeah.
But I have to push back a little here.
Okay, let's hear it.
Tech solutions usually come with their own set of hurdles,
Oh, absolutely.
We were talking about rural areas where broadband can be notoriously spotty, right? And tech literacy varies wildly depending on who you're talking to. I just worry that when we try to solve a physical barrier with a digital one, we risk alienating the exact people we're trying to reach. Like having to download a clunky app or setting up some weird patient portal or acquiring specific hardware that often just replaces a physical wall with a digital one.
Yeah, and honestly, that happens frequently in digital health initiatives.
It does.
They over-engineer the solution and make it too complicated. But the source text directly addresses this friction by emphasizing explicit simplicity.
Okay, how so?
It states very clearly all you need is your phone or laptop and an internet connection. That's it.
Oh, wow. So no proprietary hardware or anything?
Nope. They are intentionally utilizing the existing everyday infrastructure of the patient's life, rather than demanding the patient adapt to some complex new system.
I like that. Think of this telehealth model less like a digital waiting room and more like an air traffic control system.
Okay, I like where this is going.
Like, it takes a highly dispersed patient population and just routes them instantly to the exact specialist they need, completely bypassing the physical bottleneck of those winding local county roads.
That analogy captures the logistical shift perfectly. It's all about routing.
Right.
But to make that routing system work for healthcare, there is a second, really critical layer that we have to talk about.
Okay, what's the second layer?
The source notes that this 100% telehealth model is HIPAA compliant.
Ah, right. The privacy aspect.
Exactly. In the context of a digital platform, achieving HIPAA compliance means utilizing high-level medical-grade encryption. So they have taken an everyday, mundane device, like a smartphone, and engineered it to function as a legally protected, completely secure medical space.
That's pretty wild when you think about it. We had digitized the clinic, which solves the commute issue, but, digitizing therapy creates a new vulnerability, which is trust.
Yes. Trust is everything in therapy.
If a patient is sitting in their living room, exposing their trauma to a screen, a super smooth internet connection doesn't matter at all if the person on the other end isn't equipped to handle it.
Oh, absolutely. The tech is just the vehicle.
Right. So the question is, who is actually on the other side of that secure connection?
And that is the human element behind the screen, which is really the make or break factor for this entire model.
Yeah.
The source text details a team of 15-plus licensed therapists, and it specifically lists various credentials. They mention LCSWs, LPCs, and LMFTs.
Okay, let's break down that alphabet soup for a second, because the variety of those licenses actually matters a lot for the patient.
It really does. It's not just random letters.
Right. So an LCSW, which is a licensed clinical social worker, is often trained to look at the patient through a systemic lens, like how their environment, their community, and their resources are impacting their mental health.
Exactly. It's very holistic.
And then an LPC, a licensed professional counselor. They might lean heavily into cognitive behavioral interventions, really focusing on the individual's specific thought patterns.
Right, the internal mechanics.
Yeah. And finally, an LMFT, a licensed marriage and family therapist, specializes in systemic family dynamics and relational issues.
And having all three of those disciplines under one digital roof is a massive structural advantage.
I would imagine so, yeah.
Because in a rural setting, a solo practitioner has to be a jack of all trades.
They had to do everything.
Right. They are doing their best, but they cannot be an expert in cognitive behavioral therapy and systemic family dynamics and social resource management all at once. It's impossible.
No one is an expert in everything.
Exactly. So by pooling a team of 15-plus diverse practitioners into a single digital hub, CHC is offering a multidisciplinary approach that is normally reserved for, massive urban hospital networks.
That makes so much sense. And the text also points out that the team is diverse and culturally competent.
Yes, which is huge.
When you are claiming to serve all 159 counties of a state, as demographically and culturally varied as Georgia, cultural competence isn't just some corporate buzzword.
No, not at all.
It is a clinical necessity. You need therapists who actually understand the specific cultural backgrounds and lived experiences of the patients. Otherwise, that therapeutic alliance just never forms in the first place.
Yeah, without that alliance, the therapy won't work. And let's look at how this impacts the scope of services listed in the text.
Okay, yeah, they offer quite a bit.
They do. They offer individual, couples, family, and teen therapy for ages 13 and up. And their specialties cover anxiety, depression, trauma, PTSD, grief, relationships, and stress.
That's a really comprehensive list.
It is. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, we're essentially looking at the mechanics of digital load balancing.
Okay, digital load balancing. You got to break that down for the listener.
Sure. So earlier we discussed how a small town of 2,000 people might only have 5 individuals needing a specialized trauma therapist, right?
Right, which isn't enough to sustain a local physical clinic.
Exactly. But when you digitize the clinic and open it up to all 159 counties, you are pooling the demand.
Oh, I see.
You might have 5 patients in one county, 10 in another, 3 in another, and suddenly you have aggregated a massive statewide patient base.
That is so smart.
That pooled demand is what allows CHC to employ highly specialized practitioners full-time. So a patient in a remote, low-population area now has instant access to a dedicated trauma specialist or, a teen anxiety expert. The technology is literally democratizing access to specialized care.
That structural shift is brilliant. The technology isn't just making the commute shorter, it is fundamentally altering the economics of supply and demand to expand the menu of available expertise.
Yes, exactly.
But we do have to address the elephant in the room here.
The cost.
Yeah, the cost. Because high-tech, specialized care usually comes with a very premium price tag.
It almost always does.
If you are living in a rural area, perhaps on a fixed income, hearing about a high-tech, specialized telehealth service sounds completely out of reach. You'd think, there's no way I can afford that.
And that financial barrier is often the final door slammed in a patient's face.
It's tragic, really.
It is. You can fix the geography, and you can hire all the best specialists in the world, but if the patient cannot afford to turn the camera on, the entire model fails.
Right. Well, here's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
Because the source material doesn't use vague language about being, affordable.
Yeah.
It gives us the actual hard financial data.
We love hard data.
Yes. And the most striking detail in the text is their policy on Medicaid. It is literally a $0 copay.
Wow. A $0 copay for Medicaid patients is a profound structural alignment.
It's massive.
Because we already established that geographic and time tax the lost wages and the cost of gas. By engineering a system that fully leverages Medicaid to drop the out-of-pocket cost to zero, CHC is actively dismantling the compounding financial barrier to the state's most vulnerable populations.
It is such a smart utilization of existing state infrastructure.
Right.
And they don't stop at Medicaid either.
No.
Now, the text outlines a really broad private insurance landscape as well. They list major carriers like Aetna, Cigna, BCBS, UHC, and Humana.
That's a huge deal. Historically, one of the massive frictions for rural therapists has been the administrative burden of dealing with dozens of different insurance networks.
And a nightmare for small offices.
It's a total nightmare. It is often why small practices end up only taking cash. They just can't handle the paperwork.
Great.
But a centralized digital model streamlines all that administrative overhead. CHC has basically built the back-end architecture to process those major carriers efficiently.
And the text explicitly notes the result of that efficiency.
Yeah.
Sessions range from $10 to $40 a session with accepted insurance.
That's incredible.
I mean, when the national average for specialized therapy can easily drain hundreds of dollars per hour, a $10 to $40 session fee radically changes the calculus for a family who's just deciding if they can afford to get help.
It really does. They have essentially aligned their financial architecture to match their technological architecture.
Oh, I like that phrasing.
Yeah. By keeping session costs in that $10 to $40 bracket and maximizing their Medicaid utilization, CHC ensures that their specialized care is as accessible financially as it is geographically.
So what does this all mean?
Summarize it.
When we look at this source material holistically, coping and healing counseling represents a model that directly attacks the 3 distinct walls keeping people from mental health care in Georgia.
Right, the big 3.
First, they take the sprawling, impossible geography and compress it into a smartphone screen, completely eliminating the time and travel tax.
Yep.
Second, they take the economic scarcity of rural specialists and use digital load balancing to offer a multidisciplinary team of 15-plus licensed experts.
Which is huge.
And third, they tackle the crushing financial burden by leveraging Medicaid and major insurance to keep out-of-pocket costs between $0 and $40.
It is just an engineered, frictionless environment.
Yeah.
They have systematically identified every structural excuse the system typically forces on a patient, the distance, the lack of specialists, the prohibitive cost, and designed a very specific countermeasure for every single one.
And because we want to make sure you have the exact information straight from the text, the contact details provided for this network are Their phone number is 404-832-0102.
Awesome.
Their website is chiochitherapy.com, and their support email is support@chiatherapy.com.
So as we wrap up our analysis of this source, I think this raises a really important question for you, the listener, to just kind of consider.
I love a good takeaway.
We have spent this entire deep dive exploring how a simple internet connection can entirely eliminate a 2-hour drive, save a lost day of work, and bridge the gap to a clinical specialist for something as deeply personal as therapy,
Yeah,
right?
it's revolutionary.
So if we can successfully digitize and deliver that level of emotionally nuanced, specialized human connection, what else is possible?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Like, what other vital human services we have always assumed required a physical waiting room and a long drive are currently trapped behind geographical barriers just waiting to be unlocked by a screen?
That is a phenomenal thought to walk away with. Because honestly, if we can fix that broken highway to mental health care, there's no telling what else we can route directly to the people who need it most.
Exactly.
Well, that's all for today. We will see you on the next one.